Today we're joined by Dr. Carrasquillo from BostonSight. We're going to be talking about myopia management with scleral lenses, how to increase the efficiency in your contact lens practice, and higher order aberrations with scleral lens wear on the Optometric Insight Show. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Optometric Insight Show. Today, we have from Massachusetts, the Boston area, Carrasquillo, who is a fellow in almost every area of contact lenses in the BCLA, the fellow of the Contact Lens Society of Scleral Lenses. She's done work in her American Academy of Optometry. And you've also got a PhD, my friend. So she is a doctor in so many areas. And over the years, I've learned so many really, really cool things about scleral lenses because of your experience at BostonSight. So thank you for joining us for this episode of the Optometric Insight Show, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing really well, Dave. And thank you for having me. I'm really excited to join you in your podcast, Optometric Insight. Wonderful.
We are stoked. The OI show has been really catching on, and you were one of Mila and I's kind of first picks of who we wanted to be on our show. And I think there's some really, really cool things that you can share with us about becoming a better scleral contact lens fitter and about your experience. And so I was hoping to just start off, if we could hear a little bit about your background. If I recall correctly, were you born here in the United States?
I was born in a territory of the United States, but not in the mainland. I was born in Puerto Rico. I was born and raised there. And I didn't move to the States around age 27. So yeah. I've been here for about 20 years, but yeah, born and raised in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, and so talk to us about your educational background and what got you into eye care, because it may not be the same traditional methods that many people go through to get here. So walk us through your background.
Well, yeah, it was definitely not traditional, but to me, it seemed like it was a natural course. It just took me a little bit longer to get where I am today. So I started off in Puerto Rico. I studied chemistry, bachelor's in chemistry. I had this keen interest in the eye, but not necessarily in medicine at the time. I didn't think I wanted to go to medical school, but I always had an interest in the eye. And I thought that maybe on the research path and the basic science path could be a way of satisfying that interest that I had in the eye. So I chose to pursue a PhD in biochemistry, and I did drug delivery devices. That was the focus of my thesis, on biodegradable polymers, using those to deliver drugs. And I thought, hey, this could be a great avenue to use this application for drug delivery in the eye. And so once I completed my PhD in Puerto Rico, I came here to Boston, to the Massachusetts Eye and Ear Infirmary to do a postdoctoral fellowship in ophthalmological research. And there, I used my PhD knowledge and background in controlled drug delivery devices, and I applied to actually the first androgenic drug to be used for wet AMD. Back in the day, that was called Macugen. But then later, very shortly thereafter, Lucentis came out, and then Avastin, and they took over the market. But while I was at my postdoctoral fellowship, thinking that was it, that was going to be my path doing eye research, basically, I started to interact more with fellows that came from the clinic, and the aspect of interacting with patients. And the person-to-person contact has always been natural to me. I thrive just interacting with people and trying to help people. So I started to then look for opportunities. I said, I would like to do something clinical, but the thought of starting anew was a little daunting. And it just happened to be that in Boston at NECO, the New England College of Optometry at the time, they happen to have a program designed for people like me, people that have PhDs or MDs from other countries, and you could do an optometric degree, doctorate degree, in a short amount of time. It was a much more intense program, but then I thought, this is for me. It was almost like it was meant to be, right? I was right there in Massachusetts, in Boston, and so then I pursued optometry degree, and there I started to find this passion of really combining the eye and the clinic. And what led me to pursue the contact lens residency was because of my background in biodegradable polymers, thinking that using contact lenses as a drug delivery vehicle could be an application. And then I wanted to just, specialize and differentiate.
Yeah. Uh-huh. That's awesome. Where did you do your residency at?
At MECO too.
Yeah. And, fast forward, you eventually landed at BostonSight. You've been there 10 years?
Actually, 14 now. It's crazy how time
flies. Holy cow. Yeah.
I know. Yeah.
So how did you end up there? And then can you also tell us, especially for those people who don't know, what is BostonSight?
So I ended up there again. It's almost, it's a blessing, how things have come to be for me, because as a resident, BostonSight was one of my rotation sites. And at the end of my residency, I was very fortunate to, be offered a job. So I literally didn't have to go search for jobs, what a blessing. And, while I was doing the residency, I was passionate about the work that they were doing there. At the time, this was 2005. Scleral lenses were being used more and more, but it was still not really that mainstream, right? And the cases that you could treat with this medical device and the impact that you could have in the patient's quality of life was just incredible for me. And I said, this is for me. And so what is BostonSight? So we are a nonprofit clinic that has always specialized in complex corneal diseases. But it's a very interesting setup because our founder, Dr. Perry Rosenthal, back in the early 90s, he set it up as a nonprofit clinic, but he set up a manufacturing lab as well. So we always have had this setup where we treat our patients in a nonprofit model. So if you don't have the ability to pay, there is a development component to our clinic. So we raise money to cover the cost for these patients. But then we design lenses in-house. And in 2 hours, we have a lens right in front, in our exam room, and we can test in our patients and then drive those customizations in a shorter period of time, just because we have our lab there. So it's a very unique place, and it's very rewarding from what we do, the type of patients that we help, but also the fact that it's a nonprofit organization.
Yeah. Well, it certainly is one of the leaders, obviously. What Dr. Rosenthal kind of started in the scleral lens world at BostonSight, it really kind of catapulted scleral lenses back into the market. My grandfather fit scleral lenses probably in the 1950s, 1960s, but it was so few and far between. It was hardly anybody wore them. But now, fast forward, after glass was available, we've now got Perry kind of leading the way in the world of scleral lenses, and look at where BostonSight is today. It's just so cool to see what his vision has become, and I'm sure you look at that quite frequently and are blessed by it, huh?
Absolutely. We're so proud of that vision and what it has turned into. Absolutely.
Yeah. So you've also got a huge interest in education, right? I mean, I mentioned how I've learned things over the years from you. You're a frequent speaker at a lot of meetings, but you also are an adjunct faculty at 2 of the Massachusetts schools. So tell us about this interest in education, and tell us some of the educational events that you've been involved with over the years.
So, education really starts at the core of my family. So I come from a family of educators, two teachers in the house. My father is a math professor. My mom was an elementary school teacher for 35 years. So education is really at the core of my family. My dad is a passionate educator. And then I learned to appreciate, growing up, with the power of education, the fact that we can make a difference. And then, by furthering education and furthering knowledge and sharing knowledge with others, you make the world a little better each day. Even if it's in little amounts, you are contributing to making a difference. And so that has always been part of who I am. I think it's in my DNA, and I've always had an interest. I've been doing this form of education even during my PhD, my chemistry years, from TAs, in the lab, to teaching at Kaplan, teaching future medical school students their chemistry courses to take the MCAT. So very early on. And so that has translated into today, right? You always want to differentiate. For me, it's always been important to try to find angles where I can contribute in a way that is meaningful, and at least to try to contribute in ways that are meaningful, and hopefully that's how people perceive it. And so education is one way that I've always been attracted to. It could be through peer-reviewed publications, sharing what we've learned at conferences, being part of education for students. We have optometric residents rotate through our clinic. I'm involved with fourth-year externs from MCPHS. And so being involved in the formation of others is a blessing. It's a great opportunity.
Yeah. So what are you looking forward to in the next, coming years? We're recording this in March of 2021. And in the coming years, we're going to start to see things, coming year, we're going to see things opening up. What do you see as like the next evolution with contact lens education? What do you think we're going to be doing better? And the reason I ask this question is many of the people listening to this podcast are either in optometry school or have graduated in the last 10 years, and they're looking to, get involved and do more things like what you're doing, educating, speaking, lecturing, doing research, which I want you to speak to as well, and also getting into fitting scleral lenses. So what do you foresee the next year is going to be looking like for us in the educational world?
So when you ask that, you're wondering about the topics that we're going to be listening to as far as education? In scleral lenses in particular, contact lenses, right? Not to narrow it to scleral lenses only, but I think definitely the future is bright. From myopia control, there's so much that we're learning in that field. With the myopia epidemic, it's an amazing opportunity, especially for upcoming optometrists to embrace, if you're interested in contact lenses, to embrace that field and topic, because definitely you can make a difference there. And when it comes to scleral lenses, I think this looking into the future and using technology to drive these customizations to improve efficiency in the clinic, but hopefully that translates into better patient outcomes. I think we've started to see a lot of that, but I think that the future is definitely very bright in that field. The incorporation of HOA correction in scleral lenses, so that not only can you provide great therapeutic applications and options for these patients, but also enhance their vision. I think that's another interesting and very promising area of research that I'm pretty sure that all of us and students should be looking forward to, and I'm sure is going to dominate 2021 and years to come.
Mm-hmm. So let's speak about two of those particularly, maybe all of them. So scleral lenses for myopia management. Those lenses are already being used across the world. In some places, they're more frequently used in the United States. But how does that really fit in? Right now, people are wearing scleral lenses or wearing lenses while they sleep at night. Are you suggesting that kids sleep with scleral lenses, or is it something they're going to be wearing during the day and then they can take them off and see? How does that work with scleral lenses?
To be honest with you, I personally don't have much experience with the application of myopia management with scleral lenses. I know some people in Europe have used scleral lenses for that application. A dear friend and colleague, Daddy Fidel, has
Yep.
have used those for that application. So I wouldn't be able to really comment on that. I just know that it seems that it's plausible, and it seems to me that we're going to be learning more in the years to come about a potential application, even with scleral lenses. We know definitely with corneal lenses, but maybe we can expand on what we already have today with
Yeah.
scleral lenses. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the place for people who haven't really given this a thought, they might think that scleral lenses are an overkill in the arena of orthokeratology or for myopia management. And I think there's avenues with regards to myopia management, both from the putting the optics on the front surface of the lens to create that asphericity that a patient could wear the lens all day long. And that could be something that we're doing for the high myopes, the patients who are already myopic, and we're trying to keep them to go from a 7 to a 10, where that might be a challenging orthokeratology patient. Potentially, they could wear a soft multifocal if it was available in their power. But maybe traditionally, we would have used a gas permeable lens, a smaller gas permeable lens, and putting that technology into a scleral lens, even those of us who are fitting multifocal scleral lenses now, allows that patient to expand maybe in a comfort arena where scleral lenses may be more comfortable. And I also think that there could be some patients who choose to wear their scleral lenses maybe in the evening time, and then they don't wear them while they sleep, and they still remain, from an orthokeratology perspective, good through the remainder of the day. I think there's a lot that we have to learn about it. To your perspective, as many of us in the United States don't do this a lot now, but from an education, we may be learning a lot of how to use these.
I definitely think so. And as you pointed out, the incorporation of asphericity in the front surface of scleral lenses is something that we do today. And you can expand upon that and build that to definitely, for that application for sure.
Yeah, I think that's really exciting. You brought up something that has been near and dear to my heart as we've been introducing scleral lenses across the United States, you being a big part of that. And that is, are scleral lenses something where a patient needs to come in and spend 4 hours in order to be fit? And I think in most primary care practices, anything longer than 45 minutes just is an incredible amount of chair time. What have you seen, and what have you guys been doing to help with the improvement in efficiency in fitting scleral lenses?
So absolutely, it used to be that it would take us quite a long time back in the day, right, for all of us. But the beautiful of life is that, the only constant is change, right? And so things improve with time. And what we have done is embrace technology. It doesn't mean that we have developed the technology, but, we collaborate with others who have developed technology of image-guided fitting in the form of profilometry, or using instruments like the Pentacam, for example, Scheimpflug technology, and being able to obtain, that scleral shape map, if you will, or an image of the whole ocular surface. And with those elevation points and data, it's like, can you take that data and send that data to the laboratory and manufacture a contact lens or scleral lens that conforms to that scleral shape? And thank goodness to progress in technology, we have been able to collaborate, and it does make a difference. It allows you to be more efficient from a clinician point of view, but I think from the patient point of view as well. They don't have to be in the exam room or in your office as long as they used to be in the past. And so not only are you able to improve share time, but your starting point, that first fit, is so much closer to the endpoint if you are not able to even get to that endpoint from the beginning. That is just translates in a much more positive experience for the patient. I mean, I will say though, that is very important, and we always teach, arriving to the fitting endpoint much faster is of extreme value. But we always say in our clinic that when we deal with scleral lenses, especially for ocular surface disease, it's not really about the piece of plastic. You're dealing with real pathology, and so one of the things that for upcoming students or residents that are listening to us, or emergent scleral lens fitters, is that you have to take a keen interest in the pathologies that you're treating, and learning what can lead to complications, and the management and co-management, and to learn that in order to be really successful, the fitting is part of it, and getting to a faster fit is huge. But then it's the management and the co-management of the patient after you have fitted the patient, or while you're fitting the patient, and to realize that you're definitely better off when you collaborate with others. And by that, I mean with other specialists.
Yeah. And the impacts that we have on the eye with scleral lenses, we still are learning a lot about that. We've interviewed Maria Walker, and she's finishing up her PhD on the effects of scleral lenses on the eye. I know both you and I have learned a lot from her. You had mentioned Dottie Fidel, and she's also been on the podcast, and she's a brilliant practitioner in the scleral lens world. So if you haven't listened to those episodes, those of you who are listening, certainly would recommend hitting on those. But touching on a lot of those different areas, scleral lenses, we need to incorporate the specialties of other people. You mentioned higher order aberrations and the correction of that. That's a big thing that we're going to be learning about in the next couple of years. And I think more of us are starting to use those things in clinic. For those who haven't heard a whole lot about HOA, talk a little bit about what's the next iteration, and why could we not do that in the past?
One of the things about the correction of high order aberrations is you can think of it as an imprint, of in the cornea anterior or full aberration pattern, but it's dependent on the ability of a lens to be stable, or the stability of the lens. I think we've tried this for many years in soft lenses, in corneal gas permeable lenses, but these lenses move and then they translate, and we need them to. So it's like having an unstable astigmatic correction. So if you have movement and there's rotation of the lens or decentration of the lens, then that correction, if it's not properly sitting to neutralize those aberrations, not only is the patient not going to benefit from the attempt of correcting the high order aberrations, but potentially can see worse. And so what scleral lenses offer us is a platform that allows for stability. In the past, we might still be even limited, because in the past, our scleral lens designs were mainly spherical. But again, as knowledge has increased about these lens designs and what leads them to be better outcomes with them, we now have so many more designs that are quadrant specific. And with the ability of customizing in a quadrant specific manner, we can really lead to stable fitting endpoints that, the lens, if it can rotate or it can decenter, but if the rotation and the decentration stays the same throughout, and you can reliably measure whatever rotation and decentration of that lens is, then you can decenter the optics to properly accommodate that HOA correction over the front surface of that lens. And that's the key. That's why in 2020, or even, before 2020, right? There's been a few manufacturers that have been offering this for some time, but we're learning more about it definitely in the recent years. Perhaps there's more expansion of this technology, and it's slowly but surely, I believe, is going to continue to expand. And I believe more manufacturers will embrace this technology and offer this into their lens designs.
Yeah. I think some of the key things with regards to why we need HOA lenses, to your point, now that we are thinking about them, is the application tends to kind of explode. We think about individuals who are big into sports and they want to have that 2015 or 2010 vision, or 2008 vision if possible. But also, in the irregular cornea arena, there's so much that we've learned about the posterior cornea, and how the correction with a scleral lens gives us only so much correction because of that induced aberration of the posterior cornea. And, we know that. And so with this higher order aberration, we're now able to correct not just the front anterior surface of what we were doing before, but we're able to correct that posterior surface. And I think many of us, and I don't know if you've been guilty of this, probably not as much as I have, of seeing that keratoconus or irregular cornea patient and thinking in your mind, oh man, they are going to be a slam dunk. This is going to be perfect. We're going to get them 20/25 or better vision. You fit them with a lens. It's beautiful. There's hardly any over refraction, and all they can get is 20/40 vision. And those are like the prime people who likely the cause of that is that higher order aberration. Or how many times have we fit lenses on a cone patient and they say, well, I can see the line, but there's a lot of still distortion or waviness, and you're like, is there some cylinder that I didn't get or whatever? And I think many of us have scratched our head as to what that has been, and maybe we knew in the back of our mind it was higher order aberration, but what were we going to do? So this is really exciting, as you point out. Yeah,
it is. I think we've all been there.
Even you?
Of course. We've all been there, of course. And, the most frustrating part is that, you might realize that it's high order aberrations, but we all know that there's 20/20 and there's 20/20. You bring up the example of a 20/40 patient. What about those patients that we can objectively correct to like a 20/25 or 20/20 line, and they can read it, they take their time, they can identify the characters, but they tell you, I'm not happy, doctor. The quality of this vision is really poor. And they're limited, even though you're measuring, that 20/25, 20/20 level. And at night, they're really impaired. And so, you can educate them as much as you can about why they're seeing the way they're seeing. And you can try to correct as much as residual still. You can try to fish and try to correct them and play with front surface asphericity. That's certainly something that can help mitigate or, help for aberration control, and has made a lot of difference for us in the clinic throughout the years. But still, what can you do? There are some patients that just learn to accept it, that their vision is going to be a little subpar, and the quality of their vision is not going to be as best as they wish they could be. And so to me, that's the application where HOA can really make a difference, because we want to really improve the quality of life of our patients.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for your time. I think we got through a lot of really cool stuff. I learned a lot about your history, and I know there's a lot of people that have heard you speak and heard you at meetings and read your writing, and it's kind of nice to hear the background. And I'm also super excited about some things that you pointed out as far as the future of what we probably are going to be hearing more about, things that you and I are excited about with myopia management, improving efficiencies, HOA lenses, and so forth. I know you're at meetings and so forth. Is there a good website or a good resource that you think people interested in scleral lenses or things that you're interested in should visit? Is there some direction or social media you think they should be following that we could direct them to?
There's two great resources for me. One of my first resources, even when I was a resident and still today, is the GPLI, the Gas Permeable Lens Institute. They have a fantastic website full of resources, a lot of free resources that you can just download, print, and benefit and use in clinic. And if you wanted to know a little bit more about scleral lenses, I would definitely recommend people to visit the Scleral Lens Education Society website. I would encourage them to become a fellow in scleral lenses as well. So those are great resources. And as far as meetings, they're great meetings, so many meetings these days. But the Global Specialty Lens Symposium is one of the biggest meetings, in everything specialty lenses. And there's a very good smaller meeting just dedicated to scleral lenses that I happen to be in the planning committee of, and that is the International Congress of Scleral Contacts. So the reason that meeting is special, in my opinion, is because it's smaller and it's just dedicated to sclerals. It creates and promotes an environment of just really sharing ideas and open questions and answers, and an open forum for discussion, that I found that I've learned so much, sometimes even more, after the actual lecture. And so those two resources I would recommend people to look at and consider.
Yeah. Well, we will certainly update those resources in the show notes. So please don't hesitate to look down below. Make sure to like and subscribe, and feel free to leave us any comments or questions that you might have for Karen. And thank you so much for joining us today for this episode of the Optometric Insight Show. We look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you so much, David, for having me. It's a pleasure.